One woman is dead, 5 other people are injured after a knife attack in central London that police now say could be a possible terror attack. We're just getting this in. Trace Gallagher is tracking it from our breaking news desk. Trace?
And Megan, as we get new information, just within hours, police are already saying, as you mentioned, that terrorism is a possibility. How they came to that conclusion is very unclear. We know that police were called to Russell Square at 10:33 p.m. London time after those reports of the man attacking people with a knife. The woman, as you said, was killed, 5 others injured. The severity of their injuries, we do not know. The suspect was taken into custody after police used a taser to knock him down. The attack took place again in Russell Square, which is a popular area. If those who know London would know, it's near the University of London and the British Museum. Now, the area is also home to a memorial commemorating the 7/7 bombings that happened back in 2005. The attack, of course, that killed more than 50. And just hours ago, coincidentally, London authorities announced that as part of a new anti-terrorism operation, 600 additional officers would be deployed around highly visible areas around London in the wake of recent terror attacks in Europe. As the London Police Commissioner said, look, anybody who's following events in Europe well knows that for the past few weeks that they want to show their determination to protect the public.
Just recently, the head of London's police force said that the terror attack on Britain's capital is only a matter of time. French National Assembly member Jacques Maillard told RT that people should have been ready for this kind of threat.
Nobody knows when they attack. We know that it will happen. Our police told us for months that it was not if, but when and where. So we are in the same situation everywhere in Europe, everywhere in the world even, because as you know, it happens in the United States by surprise when the Americans have a lot of intelligence committee, but they could not prevent such attacks, and same for us. Those people are hiding among the nations, they are hiding amongst us, and it's very difficult to prevent them to act because in most of the time they are not known by police. They are just under the cover. We are facing a genuine, threat which may attack everywhere.
The attack comes after a string of terrorist acts across Europe. In the French city of Nice, an ISIL sympathizer of Libyan origin drove a truck into a crowd of people celebrating the National Bastille Day. Meanwhile, Germany suffered a number of vicious attacks with a series of refugees carrying out ISIS-inspired crimes, from an axe attack which took place on a night train in Bavaria to a suicide bombing attempt just outside the Ansbach concert arena. The recent wave of terror has left Europe facing a new reality.
We should learn to live with terrorism. We are facing a war that terrorism has started against us.
The entire EU is Germany. Its focal point is the target of international terrorism. And we have to expect attacks by small groups of radicalized lone operators.
A veteran Washington, D.C. police officer has been arrested and charged with providing material support to ISIS. The U.S. Department of Justice said 36-year-old Nicholas Young conspired with an FBI informant to help the terrorist group by purchasing gift cards to fund mobile messaging accounts that ISIS uses to recruit potential soldiers. Young had been a D.C. Metro Transit police officer since 2003. He was arrested Wednesday, making him the first American law enforcement officer charged with being involved with ISIS. Authorities insisted there was never any danger to the D.C. Metro system because of the close watch they had on Young. Young was well known to counterterrorism investigators. 2 of his acquaintances pleaded guilty to terrorism charges, and Young himself has been under investigation for years. Court records show Young traveled to Libya in 2011 and sympathized with Nazis and Islamic extremists.
Yeah, be cool, just move with the groove. No funk in here, the beat way too smooth. Let's just do what we came to do, just vibe with it, vibe with it. Be cool, just move with the groove. Let's go. No funk in here, the beat way too smooth. Let's just do what we came to do, just vibe with it, Yeah, be cool, just move with the groove. No funk in here, the beat way too smooth. Let's just do what we came to do, just vibe with it, vibe with it. Be cool, just move with the groove. Let's go. No funk in here, the beat way too smooth. Let's just do what we came to do, just vibe with it, vibe with it.
Our fifth and final story of the program, a leading multinational bank says it's heading into a period of heightened uncertainty after Britain voted to leave the European Union. HSBC says its pre-tax second quarter profits dropped 45% compared with the same period last year. The bank also predicted tough times ahead, saying that volatility is likely to continue for some time. It added that establishing fresh terms of trade with the EU after the Brexit would be complex and time-consuming. Last year, HSBC announced a major overhaul to cut costs. It included shedding 50,000 jobs worldwide, exiting unprofitable businesses, and focusing more on Asia.
While campaigning in Florida today, Trump attempted to capitalize on a report that the Obama administration sent $400 million in cash to Iran in January. The timing of that transaction has some crying foul. Here's Margaret Brennan.
Donald Trump joined Republican leaders in accusing President Obama of paying ransom money to Iran.
We paid $400 million for the hostages, right? Such a bad precedent, such an unbelievably bad precedent set by Obama.
The U.S. transferred $400 million to Iran last January, around the same time that Iran freed 4 American prisoners, including journalist Jason Rezaian. According to the Wall Street Journal, a cargo plane landed in Tehran loaded with stacks of cash, including euros and Swiss francs. U.S. sanctions forbid using American dollars in any transaction with Iran, considered the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism.
That's false.
Today, the White House spokesman adamantly denied that the $400 million was ransom money.
No, it was not. It is against the policy of the United States to pay ransom for hostages.
Administration officials say they were simply returning money that had been tied up in a 35-year dispute, which the president addressed earlier this year.
Iran will be returned its own funds, including appropriate interest, but much less than the amount Iran sought.
Charlie, Republican skeptics charge that despite all the diplomatic breakthroughs, Iran is still in the hostage-taking business and point out they are still holding 4 U.S. residents as prisoner.
Iran's President Hassan Rouhani claims that world powers have not fulfilled their obligations under the landmark nuclear deal implemented in January. He says the United States Congress, Israel, and other countries are preventing the implementation as Iran continues to suffer from sanctions imposed by world powers, harming its economic growth. The country still cannot access their foreign assets and is struggling to attract foreign investments and multinational companies. U.S. State Department spokesperson John Kirby, on the other hand, insists that the U.S. is meeting its obligations and will continue to abide by its commitments.
Illinois Governor Bruce Rauner has signed new legislation that forces pro-life medical professionals to refer patients for abortions. The new bill not only expands abortions into the state, but it also violates the religious beliefs of healthcare providers who believe in the sanctity of life. Under the new law, crisis pregnancy clinics are also required to counsel patients on the, quote, benefits of the procedure. Pro-life groups and Christian law firms are expected to challenge the bill.
All lives matter, right? Well, apparently not to the University of Houston. The vice president of the student government there sparking some major outrage for writing, "Forget Black Lives Matter, more like All Lives Matter." That was posted on Facebook. Well, the school didn't agree with the post, suspending that student from her VP role, and it didn't stop there. She also has to write a letter of reflection and attend a diversity workshop. That student has since apologized. A letter of reflection. I like that one. That's so PC.
A federal appeals court upheld the arrest of an Albuquerque student for burping in class on purpose. The incident happened in May 2010 when the 13-year-old belched repeatedly during PE class. The teacher made him sit in the hall, but he kept burping and laughing, prompting the teacher to call the school resource officer. The boy was eventually handcuffed and taken to juvenile jail. His family sued the principal, a teacher, and the officer for excessive force and unlawful arrest. The ruling by the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals in Denver is based on state law that prohibits anyone from interfering in the educational process of a public school. We spoke to a retired teacher who believes the arrest was too much.
I think there's mechanisms inside the school that you don't have to bump it up into a legal level and tie courts up and lawyers up and sort of label this kid as a troublemaker when it could have been handled and sort of diffused at a much earlier level.
The boys' attorneys argued their client was being a class clown that in the past would have resulted in detention or calling his parents.
Comic books are getting their first transgender superhero. Advertised as a, quote, hero for the new age, the superhero, named Chalice, is described as a mutant who is met with fear, distrust, and prejudice. According to the authors, the series the character belongs to focuses on those who've been marginalized by society or who are struggling with their gender identity, with Chalice's transition purported to be a driving factor in the comic book. The move follows several major comic book publishers, including Marvel and DC, declaring multiple established characters to in fact be gay.
So this is a human-like robot. It's called Alter, and it may actually haunt your dreams. Late last week, the Japan National Science Museum debuted the robot. It's powered entirely by a neural network, and that means all of its movements are 100% free of human control. The robot has sensors that detect noise, temperature, humidity, even proximity. And the machine may give the illusion that it's alive. Alter can even sing, but it doesn't quite move like a human just yet.
It's August, back to school time, and that means peak season for head lice. A new study finds that lice in 42 states have developed resistance to many over-the-counter treatments, but that doesn't mean the treatments won't work on the nasty nits. Experts advise using the treatments once, then repeating a week later. If that fails, you need to call your doctor.
The outbreak of mumps on Long Island, despite the widely administered vaccine. 18 people, most of them in their 20s and 30s, now recovering from the contagious virus.
Maurice, good evening. Most Americans under the age of 45 have been vaccinated against mumps. So why the outbreak now? Well, health officials believe it could be a new strain that's not covered by the MMR. That's the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. Restaurants in Long Beach piling all glasses into high-temperature dishwashers, or they're supplying plastic cups. Protective measures to stop a mumps outbreak. 18 cases so far, mostly in young adults.
I thought it was like completely wiped out. It's just weird, I guess.
But you know of several who have gotten it.
Yeah, a few of my close friends, yeah.
If you know you're sick, if you've been diagnosed with mumps, please stay home and don't transmit this. Mumps is transmitted through saliva.
The Nassau County Health Commissioner warning the virus is making a comeback in Long Beach and nearby South Shore communities, where most of the victims had been vaccinated. The virus was all but wiped out after the vaccine became standard issue in the early 70s, so this may be a new strain.
A person who has the mumps is highly contagious, and even somebody who's been vaccinated can get the mumps.
According to CNN, on Wednesday, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases Director Anthony Fauci announced that the organization had injected 2 human volunteers with an experimental DNA-based Zika vaccine. This announcement comes a month ahead of its projected schedule for vaccine development, with a speculation of Zika's apparent infiltration of U.S. mosquito populations in South Florida as the key reason for the moving of the timeline. Fauci reportedly said, quote, "If it's a home run, we'll know pretty quickly," end quote. Also adding that if the vaccine is successful, phase 2 trials could begin early next year.
UN High Commissioner for Human Rights says that the number of civilian casualties in eastern Ukraine are at their highest level in a year. Zaid Rad al-Hussein has reported 73 civilians have been killed or wounded in July. Shelling is responsible for more than half of the recorded casualties, and the rest is due to mines, booby traps, and IEDs. Hussein notes that civilians have to flee to improvised bomb shelters in their basements with increasing frequency. The High Commissioner has urged both Ukrainian and pro-Russian forces to observe the February 2015 Minsk ceasefire deal. The conflict has claimed the lives of more than 9,500 people since April 2014.
The United States has deployed 12 F-16 fighter jets and 300 servicemen to South Korea amid the rising inter-Korean tensions. The U.S. Pacific Air Forces says the 169th Fighter Wing from South Carolina arrived at Ulsan Air Base on Tuesday as part of a routine deployment to support South Korea's defense. U.S. Air Force officials say the deployment will enhance interoperability and bolster the allies' regional security interests. The deployment comes as North Korea has been ratcheting up tensions with a series of ballistic missile launches.
South Lake Avenue in Albany opened up and swallowed a car this morning.
Hi, Jim Bonita. The SUV is still in the sinkhole right now. The water commissioner just came over and gave us an update. He said it's going to be in there until at least tonight after they pull it out. And then this whole project is going to take at least a week. Here's the cell phone video view from above of a Ford Explorer in a rocketing stream of water. We found the Albany Med student who parked his car in what is now a huge hole.
My landlord just knocked on the door and said, yeah, there's something outside you need to see. Come outside, and my car is like 50% of the way submerged underground.
It's been a headache for coffee. The car looked like this when Pierre first discovered it. Then the hole grew.
So we have some new volcanic eruptions that are going on, and they've actually disrupted some flights in Indonesia. Now, the eruptions are going on Lombok Island near Bali. You've got Sinabung volcano on Mount Rinjani on Sumatra, and then Gamalama in the Moluccas chain of islands. Now, nobody's been injured, so that's some good news, but there's been a whole lot of smoke and ash. Now, the other good news is that nearby towns and farms are not in any danger. But since eruptions last year, more than 13,000 people have been evacuated, and that was mainly from around the Sinabung volcano. The three mountains are among about 130 active volcanoes in Indonesia. So a lot of the storms over the last few days have been up in the north, and of course this is the time of year that would happen. You get them up in the Dakotas, up in the upper Midwest, and boy, a couple of nights ago, some amazing time lapses of some storms near Rapid City, South Dakota.